The Greek column had been marching for weeks, a weary snake of bronze and leather winding through the rugged Pontus highlands. When they finally made camp that evening, the scent of wood smoke mixed with something sweeter, the rich floral aroma of wild honey. Local hives, heavy with golden combs, stood near their tents. The exhausted soldiers needed little encouragement. They broke open the wax, scooping the thick amber prize directly into their mouths. At first, the feast brought only relief, but within hours, the first man doubled over, his gut seizing, then another. Soon, the camp echoed with the sounds of violent retching. Men clutched their stomachs, staggering as waves of nausea and diarrhea swept through the ranks. Their legs, moments before steady from the march, began to wobble uncontrollably. Coordination dissolved into a clumsy, helpless stagger. Commander Xenophon watched in grim confusion as his 10,000 hardened warriors collapsed. They lay scattered across the hillside, unable to stand, their muscles refusing to obey. The feast had not nourished them. It had disarmed an entire army. They had consumed not just honey, but a hidden poison from the local flowers, a toxin that attacked their very nervous systems and left them utterly vulnerable. The soldiers' violent illness pointed to something in the honey itself. Centuries later, botanists would trace the source back to the rugged hillsides of the same region. There, among limestone rocks, grew dense thickets of rhododendron and azalea, their pink and white blossoms shimmering in the spring sun. Foraging bees swarmed these flowers, collecting their sweet nectar. Within the hive, the nectar transformed. As the bees fanned their wings to evaporate water, they unwittingly concentrated a potent chemical defense from the rhododendron. This compound, later named grayanotoxin, infused the honeycomb. The finished product was unlike any other, a thick, reddish-gold syrup that resisted crystallization and carried a faint, bitter aftertaste beneath its sweetness. This was the world's only naturally toxic honey. The grayanotoxin did not harm the bees, but it lay dormant in every jar. A local beekeeper, knowing its reputation, would skim a small sample from the comb. The honey glistened, deceptively inviting, holding within its amber depths the same poison that had felled an army. The same honey that had felled Xenophon's Greeks centuries earlier now became a weapon. In the rugged hills of Pontus, King Mithridates VI watched from a ridge as Pompey's Roman legions advanced. His soldiers had prepared a deceptive gift for the invaders. Clay pots filled with dark, viscous honey left conspicuously along the mountain path the Romans would march. The legionaries, weary from pursuit, discovered the abandoned pots. They dipped their fingers into the sweet substance, tasting what seemed like a fortunate prize. Within minutes, the grayanotoxin began its work. Men staggered, their vision swimming. Muscles that had marched across continents now refused to obey. They slumped to the ground, weapons slipping from numb hands as their heartbeats slowed to a dangerous crawl. From the heights, Mithridates gave the signal. His Pontic warriors descended silently upon the incapacitated Romans. The historian Strabo would later record the scene. Soldiers who could not raise a sword in their own defense, paralyzed not by steel, but by the concentrated poison of the mountain rhododendrons, harvested and weaponized by the bees of their own enemy's land. The military ambushes faded into medical journals. By the 1700s, European naturalists armed with notebooks instead of swords arrived in the Black Sea region. They sought to classify the world, but the local reports of a honey that could fell a man demanded a different kind of investigation, one of symptoms and causes, not legends. A British Army surgeon stationed there meticulously recorded his observations. His patients, villagers who had sampled the dark honey, presented a chillingly consistent tableau. Their pulses had dropped to a faint, sluggish rhythm. They complained of a world gone blurry and soft, while their mouths produced a constant, uncontrollable flow of saliva. Most haunting was their shared psychological distress. Each patient described an overwhelming, inexplicable sense of dread, a conviction that something catastrophic was imminent. The doctor's notes transformed the ancient soldier's collapse into a clinical portrait. Bradycardia, hypersalivation, visual disturbance, and a profound feeling of impending doom, all traced to a spoonful of honey. For centuries, the honey's effects were catalogued, but its cause remained a mystery. That changed when a sample of the dark, viscous honey arrived at a 20th century laboratory. A chemist isolated the active compound, naming it grayanotoxin. Under a microscope, its crystalline structure appeared deceptively simple, a tiny key that would unlock a cellular prison. Researchers then exposed nerve cells to the toxin. They watched as the grayanotoxin molecules drifted toward the cell membranes, latching onto specific sodium channels. These microscopic gates, which normally flicker open and shut to transmit electrical impulses, were jammed permanently open. A relentless flood of sodium ions poured into the cells, overwhelming their delicate electrical balance. This cellular hijacking explained everything. In the heart muscle, the constant signal forced a dangerously slow, weak beat. In the nerves, it caused misfiring that led to dizziness, blurred vision, and that profound sense of doom. The ancient poison did not destroy cells. It held their communication lines open, creating a paralyzing electrical scream within the body. By the 20th century, the poison had become a product. In the bustling bazaars of Istanbul and Kathmandu, vendors displayed small, dark glass jars filled with a viscous, reddish honey. They called it deli bal, in Turkey, mad honey, and whispered of its potent, traditional powers to those who browsed their stalls. A shopkeeper might lift a jar, explaining how a mere half-teaspoon before a meal could soothe a troubled stomach or calm high blood pressure. For the discreet customer, he'd hint at its legendary ability to enhance virility and stamina, tapping the jar with a knowing smile that ignored the grayanotoxin within. This created a dangerous commerce. Locals, trusting in generations of folk medicine, purchased the honey as a cure-all. Tourists, lured by exotic remedies, bought it as a curiosity. Both groups often remained unaware that the line between a medicinal dose and a toxic one was perilously thin, measured in mere grams. The ancient poison had not vanished. It simply found new victims. In a stark, fluorescent-lit room at an Istanbul hospital, a young tourist lay on a gurney, his skin pale and clammy. He had purchased a small jar of dark red honey from a spice bazaar stall, consumed several heaping spoonfuls as a dare, and now his body was shutting down. Medical monitors above his head emitted a steady, urgent beep, their screens displaying numbers that told the story. A heart rate dipping into the 40s, blood pressure plummeting dangerously low. A doctor, her brow furrowed, traced the grayanotoxin's path through his system. The molecules had latched onto his nerve cells, jamming their sodium channels open. This electrical short-circuit was strangling the signals to his heart, slowing its beat to a weak, sluggish thump. His pupils were dilated, his breathing shallow. Every monitor confirmed the same terrifying truth. His cardiovascular system was being systematically suppressed by a substance marketed as a folk remedy. The nurse prepared a syringe of clear liquid, atropine. This modern antidote works as a chemical antagonist, blocking the same receptors the grayanotoxin overwhelms. She injected it into the IV line. For tense minutes, the team watched the screens, waiting for the numbers to climb. Slowly, the heart rate stabilized. The blood pressure began its gradual ascent back to safety. The tourist would recover, but his curiosity had delivered a visceral, monitored lesson in toxicology. While doctors in Istanbul stabilized their patient, the source of his affliction grew on distant cliffs. High in the Nepalese Himalayas, gurung hunters scaled sheer rock faces, their bamboo ladders creaking against stone. They sought not ordinary honey, but the dark, viscous combs built by giant Himalayan bees, Apis laboriosa, that had foraged exclusively in the rhododendron forests blanketing the slopes below. Smoke from smouldering bundles of green leaves billowed upward, calming the defensive swarm. A hunter, secured by hemp ropes, reached into the hive with a long harvesting pole. His movements were deliberate, his grip firm but gentle. He knew that rupturing the delicate wax could release the precious toxic nectar within, a substance so potent that a single misjudged taste could bring a grown man to his knees. The honey, dripping into a wooden bucket, held a deep, reddish amber hue. The hunters handled each comb as if it were a live ember, ensuring none touched their lips or skin. This harvest, known locally as mad honey, would be sealed tightly and carried down to villages. There, it commanded a price many times that of common honey, valued for its rarity and its dangerous intoxicating power. Back in Istanbul, the hospital case triggered an official response. Public health authorities faced a dilemma. They couldn't outlaw a natural product with centuries of traditional use, but the stream of tourist poisonings demanded action. Their solution wasn't a ban, but a campaign of awareness. Teams began designing simple visual warnings for the regions most affected. Soon, colourful leaflets appeared in airport terminals and popular bazaars. They featured two clear photographs, one of the distinctive deep amber red honey in a jar and another of the vibrant pink and purple rhododendron blossoms. The message was direct and urgent, printed in multiple languages. Do not consume this honey, it can cause severe poisoning. The warnings spread through tourist hubs, from the coast of the Black Sea to the trekking routes of Nepal. For visitors, it was a straightforward caution against a curious souvenir. For locals, it represented a modern, paper-thin boundary drawn around an ancient and potent substance, a recognition that some traditions now required a public health footnote. Following the official warnings, the story of the honey did not end. It simply retreated from the public eye, back into the small shops and mountain villages where it had always belonged. In a dimly lit storefront in a Turkish town near the Black Sea, the air was thick with the scent of beeswax and wildflowers. A local beekeeper, his hands weathered from decades of work, reached for a specific jar from a high shelf. The jar was smaller and darker than the others, its contents a deep, opaque amber. He placed it carefully on a worn wooden counter beside a delicate brass scale. With a steady hand, he used a tiny silver spoon to scoop out a dense portion. The honey clung to the spoon, falling in a slow, viscous thread that shimmered under the single hanging bulb. He adjusted the counterweight until the scale balanced perfectly at just 5 grams. A regular customer waited, seeking the traditional remedy for his arthritis. The beekeeper packaged the minute amount in waxed paper, a transaction based on generations of folk knowledge. Here, the ancient allure of a potent cure coexisted uneasily with the modern certainty of its contained poison.